We read 14 or 15 verses in Genesis, and then we'll read the magic account in Jasher because I think it's really interesting. I think everybody else will find it. So here's this story that I heard somebody tell. It says it's called A Certain Entrepreneur, which, I mean, we're all kind of entrepreneurs here, so I thought it was relevant, right? So it says a certain entrepreneur started a national business. He employed many from his native land. As his employees were chosen, he gave them his policies and procedures manual. The manual included all the necessary requirements to be a representative of him and his company. It included the holidays that his company would observe, what could and couldn't be brought into company property, as well as how each employee must conduct themselves. Many years later, the entrepreneur was determined to take his business to a global scale. He had his son conduct the process required to do that. As the son recruited the new foreign employees, he presented each new employee with three things. First was his father's original policies and procedures manual. Second was documented and detailed accounts of how his father reacted when his policies and procedures were not followed in the past. Third, he provided for the new employees a company liaison to be available to them at all times should any one of them have a question concerning the policies and procedures manual. The liaison would be there to interpret for them. However, shortly after the new employees were hired, they decided that the original policies and procedures manual passed down from the father and passed on to them from the son certainly did not apply to them, but should only apply to the original employees. The new employees then wrote their own manual with total disregard for the original. They set up different holidays, rules, different regulations. So now the liaison has nothing to interpret for them. When the entrepreneur and his son come back to check on the company, will they recognize it? So, Genesis, does anybody else have a Bible handy with them? Mm-hmm. Jamie, you got one? So why don't you read this, and then I'll read.
I have one on my phone.
Okay. Well, why don't you guys take turns reading? That way it's not just me. So, Genesis 22. I want to read this account in Genesis first. So, Jamie, why don't you read Genesis 22, 1 through 7, and then Rachel, you read 8 through 14.
She can read it all. I guess probably needed something.
You want to read 1 through 14? Chapter 20?
Oh, yeah. Okay. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. He cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. He said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Where do I stop?
8 through 14.
Abraham answered, God himself is providing the lamb for the sacrifice, my son. So both Abraham and his son went together to that place, and when they came to the place where God told them to go, Abraham built an altar. He carefully laid the wood on the altar, and then he tied up his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached for his knife to kill his son. But the angel of the Lord stopped him. The angel called from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. Abraham answered, Yes. The angel said, Don't kill your son or hurt him in any way. Now I can see that you do respect and obey God. I see that you are ready to kill your son, your only son, for me." Then Abraham noticed a ram whose horns were caught in a bush. So Abraham went and took the ram. He offered it instead of his son as a sacrifice to God. So Abraham gave that place a name, "The Lord Provides." Even today people say, "On the mountain of the Lord, he will give us what we need."
Yep. So I read this yesterday in the book of Joshua. So it's the same account that we just read in Genesis, but it has additional details that really add to the story. So I would like to read that.
Which Jasher is mentioned in the Bible. So a lot of people don't read it because they say it's part of the Apocrypha, but the Bible actually references Jasher.
Yeah, I would do some. I've been reading a lot of those books, and I've not come across anything that's contrary. Or all these used to be in the Bible, but they were taken out. So just do your own research. Don't just if you go to the first thing on Google, it's typically what they want you to see. So let's read this. I find this very, very interesting. So I'll start in chapter 22, verse 40. And Isaac, the son of Abraham, was growing up in those days. And Abraham, his father, taught him the way of the Lord, to know the Lord, and the Lord was with him. And when Isaac was 37 years old, Ishmael, his brother, was going about with him in his tent. And Ishmael boasted of himself to Isaac, saying, "I was 13 years old when the Lord spoke to my father to circumcise us. And I did according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke to my father. And I gave my soul unto the Lord, and I did not transgress his word, which he commanded my father." And Isaac answered Ishmael, saying, "Why dost thou boast to me about this, about a little bit of thy flesh, which thou didst take from thy body, concerning which the Lord commanded me? As the Lord liveth, the God of my father Abraham, if the Lord should say unto my father, Take now thy son Isaac, and bring him up for an offering before me, I would not refrain, but I would joyfully accede to it." And the Lord heard the word of Isaac that spoke to Ishmael, and it seemed good in the sight of the Lord. And he thought to try Abraham in this matter. And the day arrived when the sons of God came and placed themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with the sons of God before the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said to Satan, What is thy word to me concerning all the children of the earth? And Satan answered the Lord and said, I have seen all the children of the earth, who serve thee and remember thee, when they require anything from thee. And when thou givest them this thing which they require from thee, they sit at their ease and forsake thee, and they remember thee no more. Hast thou seen Abraham the son of Terah, who at first had no children, and he served thee and erected altars to thee wherever he came? And he brought up offering upon them, and he proclaimed thy name continually to all the children of the earth. And now that his son Isaac is born to him, he has forsaken me. He has made a great feast for all the inhabitants of the land, and the Lord he has forgotten. For amidst all that he has done, he has brought thee no offering, neither burnt offering nor peace offering, neither ox, lamb, nor goat, of all that he killed on that day that his son was weaned. Even from the time of his son's birth to now, being 37 years, he built no altar before thee, nor brought any offering to thee, for he saw that thou didst give what he requested before thee, and he therefore forsook thee. And the Lord said to Satan, Hast thou thus considered my servant Abraham? For there is none like him upon the earth, a perfect and upright man before me, one that feareth God and avoideth evil. As I live, where I say to him, Bring up Isaac thy son before me, he would not withhold him from me. Much more, if I told him to bring up a burnt offering before me from his flock or herds. And Satan answered the Lord and said, Speak now then unto Abraham, and thou hast said, and thou wilt do, whether he will not this day transgress and cast aside thy words. At that time, the word of the Lord came to Abraham, and he said unto Abraham, and he said to him, Here I am. And he said to him, Take now thy son, thine only son, whom thou lovest, even Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which shall be shown thee. For there wilt thou see a cloud and the glory of the Lord. And Abraham said within himself, How shall I separate my son Isaac from Sarah his mother, in order to bring him up for a burnt offering before the Lord? And Abraham came into the tent, he sat before Sarah his wife. he spoke these words to her. My son Isaac is grown up, and he's not for some time studied the service of his God. Now tomorrow I will go and bring him to Shem and Eber his son. Shem is Noah's son. And there he will learn the ways of the Lord, for they will teach him to know the Lord, as well as to know that when he prayeth continually before the Lord, he will answer him. Therefore, there he will know the way of serving the Lord his God. And Sarah said, Thou hast spoken well. Go, my lord, and do unto him as thou hast said. But remove him not at a great distance from me. Neither let him remain there too long, for my soul is bound within his soul. And Abraham said unto Sarah, My daughter, let us pray to the Lord our God, that he may be good to us. And Sarah took her son Isaac, and he abode all that night with her. And she kissed and embraced him, and gave him instructions till morning. And she said to him, O my son, how can my soul separate itself from thee? And she still kissed him and embraced him, and she gave Abraham instructions concerning him. And Sarah said to Abraham, O my lord, I pray thee, take heed of thy son, and place thine eyes over him, for I have no other son or daughter but him. O forsake him not. If he be hungry, give him bread. If he be thirsty, give him water to drink. Do not let him go on foot, neither let him sit in the sun. Neither let him go by himself in the road, nor force him from whatever he may desire, but do unto him as he may say to thee. And Sarah wept bitterly the whole night on account of Isaac, and she gave him instructions till morning. And in the morning Sarah selected a very fine and beautiful garment from those garments which she had in the house that Abimelech gave to her. And she dressed Isaac her son therewith. And she put a turban on his head, and she enclosed a precious stone in the top of the turban. And she gave them provisions for the road, and they set forth. And Isaac went with his father Abraham, and some of their servants accompanied them to see them off the road. And Sarah went out with them, and she accompanied them upon the road to see them off. And they said to her, Return to the tent. And when Sarah heard these words of her son Isaac, she wept bitterly. And Abraham her husband wept with her, and their son wept with them, with great weeping. Also those who went with them wept with grief. And Sarah caught hold of her son Isaac, and she held him in her arms, and she embraced him and continued to weep with him. And Sarah said, Who knoweth if after this day I shall ever see thee again? And they still wept together, Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac, and all those that accompanied them on the road with them. And Sarah afterward turned away from her son, weeping bitterly. And all the men servants and maidservants returned to her tent. And Abraham went with Isaac his son to bring him up at his offering before the Lord, as he had commanded him. And Abraham took two of his young men with him, Ishmael, the son of Hagar, and Eleazar, his servant. And they went together with them, and while they were walking in the road, the young men spoke these words to themselves. And Ishmael said to Eleazar, Now my father Abraham is going with Isaac to bring him up for a burnt offering to the Lord, as he commanded him. Now when he returneth, he will give unto me all that he possesses, to inherit after him, for I am his firstborn. And Eleazar answered Ishmael and said, Surely Abraham did cast thee away with thy mother, and swear that thou should not inherit anything of all he possesses. And to whom will he give all he has with all his treasures? But unto me his servant, who has been faithful in his house, who has served him night and day, and has done all that he desired. To me will he bequeath at his death all that he possesses. And while Abraham was proceeding with his son Isaac along the road, Satan came and appeared to Abraham in the figure of a very aged man, humble and contrite spirit. And he approached Abraham and said to him, Art thou silly or brutish that thou goest to do this thing this day to thy only son? For God gave thee a son in thy latter days, in thy old age, and wilt thou go and slaughter him this day because he committed no violence, and wilt thou cause the soul of thine only son to perish in the earth? Dost thou not know and understand that this thing cannot be from the Lord? For the Lord cannot do unto man such evil upon earth, to say to him, Go slaughter thy child? And Abraham heard this, and knew that it was the word of Satan, who endeavored to draw him aside from the way of the Lord. But Abraham would not hearken to the voice of Satan. And Abraham rebuked him, so that he went away. And Satan returned and came to Isaac. And he appeared unto Isaac in the figure of a young man, calmly and well favored. And he approached Isaac and said to him, Dost thou not know and understand that thy old silly father bringeth thee to slaughter this day for naught? Now therefore, my son, do not listen nor attend to him, for he is a silly old man, and let not thy precious soul and beautiful figure be lost from the earth. And Isaac heard this, and said unto Abraham, Hast thou heard, my father, that which this man has spoken? Even thus has he spoken. And Abraham answered his son Isaac, and said to him, Take heed of him, and do not listen to his words, nor attend to him, for he is Satan, endeavoring to draw aside us this day from the man's. And Abraham so rebuked Satan, and Satan went from him, to see if he did not prevail over him. He hid himself from them, and he went and passed before them in the road, and he transformed himself into a large brook of water in the road. And Abraham and Isaac, his two young men, reached that place, and they saw a brook large and powerful with mighty waters. And they entered the brook and passed through it. And the waters at first reached their legs. And they went deeper in the brook, and the waters reached up to their necks. And they were all terrified on account of the water. And while they were going over the brook, Abraham recognized that place, and he knew that there was no water there before. And Abraham said to his son Isaac, I know this place in which there was no brook nor water. Now therefore it is Satan who does this to us, who draws aside this day from the commands of God. And Abraham rebuked him and said unto him, The Lord rebuke thee, O Satan, be gone from us, for where we go by the commands of God. And Satan was terrified at the voice of Abraham, and he went away from him. And the place again became dry land as it was at first. And Abraham went with Isaac toward the place that God had told him. And on the third day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place in the distance which God had told him. And a pillar of fire appeared to him that reached from the earth to heaven, and a cloud of glory upon the mountain. The glory of the Lord was seen in the cloud. And Abraham said to Isaac, My son, dost thou see in the mountain which we perceive at a distance, that which I see upon it? And Isaac answered and said unto his father, I see, and lo, a pillar of fire, and a cloud, and the glory of the Lord was seen upon the mountain. And Abraham knew that his son Isaac was accepted before the Lord for a burnt offering. And Abraham said unto Eleazar and unto Ishmael his son, Do you also see which we see upon the mountain which is at a distance? And they answered and said, We see nothing more like than the other mountains of the earth. And Abraham knew that they were not accepted before the Lord to go with him. And Abraham said to them, Abide ye here, for he asked, Will I and Isaac, my son, go yonder mountain, and worship there before the Lord, and return to him? And Eleazar and Ishmael remained at that place, as Abraham had commanded. And Abraham took the Lord's offering and placed it upon his son Isaac, and he took fire and the knife, and they both went to that place. And when they were going along, Isaac said to his father, Behold, I see here the fire and the wood, and where then is the lamb that is to be burnt offering for the Lord? And Abraham answered his son Isaac, saying, The Lord has made choice of thee, my son, to be a perfect burnt offering instead of. And Isaac said unto his father, I will do all that the Lord says, with joy and cheerfulness of heart. And Abraham again said unto Isaac his son, Is there in thy heart any thought or counsel concerning this, which is not proper? Tell me, my son, I pray thee. O my son, conceal it not from me. And Isaac answered his father Abraham, and said unto him, O my father, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is nothing in my heart to offer to either to the right or to the left, in the word that he has spoken. Neither limb nor muscle has moved or stirred at this, nor is there in my heart any thought or evil counsel concerning this. But I am joyful and cheerful in this matter, and I say, Blessed is the Lord, who has this day chosen me to be a burnt offering before him. And Abraham greatly rejoiced at the words of Isaac, and they went on and came together to the place that the Lord had spoken to him. And Abraham approached to build the altar in that place, and Abraham was weeping. Isaac took stones and mortar until they had finished building the altar. And Abraham took the wood and placed it in order upon the altar, and sealed them. And he took his son Isaac and bound him in order to place him upon the wood which was upon the altar, to slay him for a burnt offering. And Isaac said unto his father, Bind me securely, and place me upon the altar, lest I should turn and move and break loose from the force of the knife upon my flesh, and therefore profane the burnt offering. And Abraham did so. And Isaac still said to his father, O my father, when thou shalt have slain me, and burnt me for an offering, take the feed, that which shall be made of my ashes, and bring to Sarah my mother, and say to her, This is a sweet smelling savor. Do not tell her this, that she should sit here and dwell or upon my place, lest she should cast her soul after me and die. And Abraham heard the words of Isaac, and he lifted up his voice, and he wept when Isaac spake to him. And Abraham's tears gushed down upon Isaac. And Isaac wept bitterly. He said to his father, Hasten now, O my father, and do with me the will of the Lord our God, as he has commanded. And the hearts of Abraham and Isaac rejoiced at this thing which the Lord had commanded. But the eyes wept bitterly, while the heart. And Abraham bound his son Isaac, and placed him on the altar upon the wood. And Isaac stretched forth his neck upon the altar before his father. And Abraham stretched forth his hand to take the knife, and slay his son as a burnt offering before the Lord. At that time the angels of mercy came before the Lord and spake to him concerning Isaac, saying, O Lord, thou art merciful and compassionate, king over all that he has created in heaven and on earth. And thou supportest him. Give therefore ransom and redemption instead of thy servant Isaac. Pity and have compassion upon Abraham and Isaac his son, who are this day performing thy command. Hast thou seen, O Lord, how Isaac the son of Abraham thy servant is bound down to slaughter like an animal? Now therefore let thy pity be roused for them, O Lord. At that time the Lord appeared to Abraham, called to him from heaven, and said unto him, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that thou fearest God in performing this act, and not withholding thy son, thine only son, from you. And Abraham lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, a ram was caught in the thicket by his thorns. That was the ram which the Lord God had created in the earth, in the day that he made heaven and earth. For the Lord had prepared this ram from that day to be a burnt offering instead of Isaac. And this ram was advancing to Abraham, when Satan caught hold of him and entangled his horns in the thicket, that he might not advance to Abraham, in order that Abraham might slay his son. And Abraham, seeing the ram advancing to him, and Satan holding him, fetched him and brought him before the altar. And he loosened his son Isaac from his binding. He put the ram in his stead, and Abraham killed the ram upon the altar. He brought it up as an offering in the place of his son Isaac. And Abraham sprinkled some of the blood upon the ram upon the altar. He exclaimed and said, This is in place of my son, and may this be considered this day as the blood of my son. And all that Abraham did on this occasion by the altar, he would exclaim and say, This is in the room of my son. And may it be this day be considered before the Lord in the place of my son. And Abraham finished the whole service by the altar. The service was accepted before the Lord. It was counted as if it had been Isaac that the Lord blessed Abraham in seed on that day. And Satan went to Sarah. He appeared to her figure in the figure of an old man, very humble and meek. And Abraham was yet engaged in the burnt offering before the Lord. And he said unto her, Dost thou not know all the work that Abraham has made with thine only son this day? For he took Isaac and built an altar and killed him, and brought him up as a sacrifice on the altar. And Isaac cried and wept before his father, but he looked not at him, neither did he have compassion on him. And Satan repeated these words, and he went away from her. And Satan heard all the words of Satan, and she imagined him to be an old man from amongst the sons of men who had been with her son, and had come and told her these things. And Sarah lifted up her voice and wept and cried out bitterly on account of her son. And she threw herself upon the ground. She cast dust upon her head, and she said, O my son Isaac, my son, O that I had this day died instead of thee. She continued to weep and said, It grieves me for thee, O my son Isaac, O that I had died this day instead of thee. And she continued to weep and said, It grieves me for thee, after that I have reared thee, have brought thee up. Now my joy is turned into mourning for thee, and I had a longing for thee, and cried and prayed to God, till I buried thee at 90 years old. And now hast thou served this day for the knife and the fire to be made an offering? But I console myself with thee, my son, in this being the word of the Lord, and thou didst perform the command of thy God. For who can transgress the word of our God, whose hands is the soul of every living creature? Thou art just, O Lord our God, for all thy works are good and righteous. For I also am rejoicing with thy word, which thou didst command, while mine eyes are filled with my heart rejoicing. And Sarah laid her head upon the bosom of one of her handmaids, and she became as still as a stone. She afterward rose up and went about making inquiries till she came to Hebron, and she inquired of all those whom she met walking in the road. And no one could tell her what had happened to her son. And she came with her maidservants and menservants to Kiriath-arba, which is Hebron, and she, asking concerning her son, she remained there while she sent some of her servants to seek where Abraham had gone with Isaac. They went to seek him in the house of Shem and Eber, and they could not find him. And they sought throughout the land, he was not there. And behold, Satan came to Sarah in the shape of an old man. He came and stood before her, and he said unto her, I spoke falsely, for Abraham did not kill his son, and he is not dead. And when she heard the words of her joy was so exceedingly violent on account of her son that her soul went out through joy, and she died and was gathered to her people. And when Abraham had finished his service, he returned with his son Isaac to his young men. And they rose up together and went to Beersheba, and they came home. And Abraham sought for Sarah and did not find her. And he made inquiries concerning her. And they said unto him, She went as far as Hebron to see you both, where you had gone. With us was she informed. And Abraham and Isaac went to her in Hebron, and when they found that she was dead, they lifted up their voices and wept bitterly over her. And Isaac fell upon his mother's face and wept over her. He said, O my mother, how hast thou left me? And where hast thou gone? Oh, how hast thou left me? And Abraham and Isaac wept greatly, and all their servants wept with them, and found Sarah, and mourned over her great face.
Discussion or anything?
Anybody have any thoughts or questions? Or,
Well, that adds a lot to the story.
Yeah, the Genesis, we get 14 verses. That we get a lot more. It just tells us a little bit more how difficult this situation must have been. Wasn't as simple as Abraham just doing what he was supposed to do and then just going home and all's good. It was much more difficult.
It also gives you all of Satan's interaction,
Exactly.
which you wouldn't be aware of.
And it tells us what Satan's motive is. Anybody pick up on that? It says that his Satan endeavoring to draw us aside this day from the commands of God. Satan's goal is to get us to not follow the commands of God. And did anybody else pick up the beginning of the story? How similar it is to Job? You know, where Satan says to God, "Where have you been?" And he says, "Going to and fro." He says, "Have you considered my servant Job?"
Does it have a baby?
It's like mirror image to Job.
Oh. Does this one have a baby? No?
Well, and I've heard that preached on before, and you know, what a crazy thing for God to
Look,
like
Nelly. Look, you can put them right here.
hey, hold on, ask, you know, Abraham to do, but I guess there were other gods that people were worshiping that like child sacrifice was a normal part of what was going on in that time with other gods that were worshipped. And so for Abraham then to be asked by God to do this, it's like, okay, well, child sacrifice, I guess, was normal. So, so then God got to set himself apart by at the end saying, no, you
If
know,
you want to
you're not
that's
going to sacrifice your son. I'm providing you a sacrifice. And so, just that whole aspect, when I heard that preached on however long ago, was just kind of cool too, because, you know, God's always setting himself apart. And so to be able to see it in that view, was new to me.
It says he's 37.
And yes,
Hey, Millie, do you
Isaac
have a
being
horse?
37. And I
Yeah.
I have
Isaac's
a
faith
bear
almost
too. Do you
was
have a
greater
horse?
than Abraham's. You know, Abraham was asking him,
No.
"Are you sure you want to do this? Do you have any reserve?" And Isaac is
Horse?
the strength of Abraham by saying
This
yes.
is fun. Look, these are fun. Want a horse? Can I have the cheetah? You can have. Ooh, that's cute.